the caveat to be paying attention to, though, is not only who are the users, but what are they adopting?
Hi guys, welcome to our third episode of Blockchain Beyond Hype. Today we're talking with Melissa Loh from One Unit about the mass adoption of blockchain technology. So we're here today with Melissa. Welcome to Blockchain Zoo. We're excited to have you here to discuss your thoughts on mass adoption of the blockchain technology. So we have spotted you in your insightful presentation about user adoption of blockchain and crypto. How have you come to so many insights? Is it based on your consulting work with various projects across the globe?
I guess it first started as being a user myself and having a lot of different experiences, hands-on, in using different types of blockchain technologies and applications. That helped. And also, I've been a business consultant for a long time, doing a lot of business development with entrepreneurs and small businesses, and taking technology solutions and figuring out what's the best solution for the business case that we're trying to solve. And so I have a lot of knowledge and insight on how do actually people adopt new tech systems into their everyday experiences. And so I took that and kind of translated it to apply to what I do now, which is specifically helping to build out blockchain ventures.
Okay. So during the meetup, you mentioned that you were part of the amazing crypto ecosystem here in Ubud. When you paid the rent, got paid for work, and you were purchasing different goods with cryptocurrencies. It was during the peak price time. So is this ecosystem gone just because prices dropped?
I would say it started well before the prices started skyrocketing. And so, it was back in the day when I think Bitcoin was around $300 to $400. And so, the merchant adoption continued to grow during that time, and the price was a lot more stable and less volatile. And I think we got up to over 100 merchants accepting it, pushed by a few key people in the community that did a lot of very admirable work on a nonprofit level, actually just educating people, teaching Bitcoin 101 classes, teaching businesses how to get set up. And that for me was such an amazing experience to just be part of and see grow. And it just grew even more and more when the peak actually happened. And you look around in the room and it's packed with people, all kinds of people coming out of the woodwork, and who are interested in cryptocurrency. Since then, I would say that what really impacted the change in the growth of the ecosystem, what slowed it down, was a few factors actually. And so one of those factors was the scalability of the technology. So as it became more popular and the network became more used, the transactions became slower, they became more expensive, and so it just became not as practical to use it. As well as people wanted to hold it more, and so it became more of a store of value than a means of exchange. Okay. And third, there was a regulatory aspect of it, where Indonesian government actually implemented an existing law that said that you cannot use any other currency besides the fiat currency rupiah to make payments, and so the ecosystem kind of came crashing down once that got really implemented.
Okay. So as your business activities are going in the same tempo and direction, I assume that decreasing hype did not spook you off. And you clearly see the value of technology beyond the cryptocurrencies. Mass adoption brings a question to mind. Who are the users of the technology? I bet there are a dozen, including several bigger groups. How would you classify those groups?
Yeah, so when you talk about the topic of user adoption, the big question that you framed was, who are the actual users? And so there's the ground level peer-to-peer, like you and I, who are holding Bitcoin, and we might, I might pay you for something in Bitcoin or vice versa. And that's one thing for user adoption from the means of using a payment currency. But I like to view a vast landscape of users. And so that includes, let's say, institutions. So we go from end user consumers like you and I on the ground to the institutions, meaning, let's say, governments, for example. So governments could implement using some kind of blockchain implementation so that they could start adopting it into their systems and their citizens eventually start using it too. If you look at more of an institutional level, again, you can look at private companies and enterprises who are, looking to integrate that into their systems. Like, for example, even the huge media giant Facebook is exploring implementing a cryptocurrency into their WhatsApp Messenger platform, potentially into Instagram, and creating their own coin and their Facebook coin, which would have, its own huge implications, of course, because they have over 1 billion users in their network. And what would that do to impact mainstream adoption? The caveat to be paying attention to, though, is not only who are the users, but what are they adopting? And so are they adopting, for example, a centralized digital currency that's running only on their closed network like Facebook? Or are they adopting a decentralized cryptocurrency, specifically like Bitcoin, for example, that runs across multiple nodes and anyone can participate?
Okay. So who do you think will be the first to adopt the technology, and who will be the last, and why?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing adoption on the ground on the peer level, but the first people to really adopt it on a more massive level are the ones that really need it, actually, because I feel that based on intuition and also what I've seen in like trying to get people to use new tech, there's a resistance. There's a lot of friction to people adopting new systems. Even myself, I have to download another messaging app or another payment app, So there's resistance, and there needs to be actually a sense of urgency and need. And so what I'm seeing now in the space is, if you look at the statistics, the high levels of user adoption are happening in countries where they really need it. So for example, countries that are serving an underbanked or unbanked population, so they don't have access to kind of the more legacy banking systems of ease. So if I compare it to places that I've spent a lot of time, like in the US, I love it because the financial system is so easy and it's set up and it's got all these kinds of apps that you can plug into and automate and sync, and it's a seamless experience. But if you go to a different type of country, a lesser developed country like Indonesia, for example, you don't have that same level of banking technology that is a seamless experience. Yeah. It's getting better and better, but I think that's why the people who don't have access, especially if you look up like Venezuela or the Philippines, you're seeing massive more usage of using Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency or other cryptocurrencies, or where apps like coins.ph is somehow able to accumulate like 5 million users for their application, and that involves some component of cryptocurrency. So yeah, those are the ones that I feel are going to move fastest.
Yeah, because they need it more. That's right. So in order to have benefits from using a fax machine, there should be at least 2 owners of fax. Same with blockchain. We need a certain bulk of active users in order to make it work. What are the main roadblocks, in your opinion, for enterprises, institutions, blockchain builders, and the public?
Yeah, so I think there's quite a number of general challenges that people face that block mass adoption. So one is there's a huge learning curve, and people need to take time to kind of go down the rabbit hole, understand what the technology is, how they can benefit it, how they can implement it, and then they want to go, like, one person will get excited, and I've seen this happen countless times in the communities. And oftentimes, there's a comedian, John Oliver, who did a show about cryptocurrency, and he singles out this little skit about the one guy in your family that's really into Bitcoin and won't stop talking about it, but everyone else has no idea what they're talking about. And so I think that happens is that one person in an organization or a community will get excited about it, read about it, understand, but then everyone else doesn't know what it is and how to relate to it, and again might have resistance to learning something new. So education is a base challenge to get through, and then 2 is the technology itself. So if the technology is not scalable yet, or it's not ready for full implementation and mass adoption, where it's actually going to buckle if mainstream does start using it as much as let's say Visa or PayPal is used, then it's going to crumble on itself. So there's a lot of work and building and testing to do to help with mass adoption, as well as then it's like, what does the interface look like? So there's a huge lack of great UI and UX, user interface design and user experience design that has happened in the space, because I think a lot of times in new tech, it's the developers that really push it forward first, and they move fast and they don't necessarily have the same mindset as designers have. And so I think also, like, once we see some designers coming into it and addressing like how it feels, the look and feel and the experience of interacting with blockchain, to the point where the users don't even need to know what blockchain really is, thus eliminating the first issue of the huge learning curve, I think that will help a lot.
Okay. So there are many legitimate teams who built an interesting solution, seeing the problem first and then finding a good tech blend for solving it. Off the top of your mind, where is mass adoption actually happening, and where are dApps being used actively?
So from the research that I've been doing and like scanning the news and reading the statistics, I see there's a lot of action that's happening on the enterprise and institutional level. And so, about 25% are actually investing in blockchain right now or plan to. And so that number is continuing to grow. And whether, what version of blockchain technology it's going to implement is still remains to be seen. But, but from a more decentralized tech and a cryptocurrency level, what comes to mind off the top of my head is what Dash is doing in Venezuela, for example. So oftentimes with user adoption on the ground, where you're looking at merchants and payment solutions, there's this chicken and egg scenario that happens. And what I mean by that is, let's say you want mass adoption to happen on the ground, but let's say the merchant is thinking, okay, I want to accept this cryptocurrency, but there's nobody there to pay with it. So why would I set up that system? Why would I invest in that system? Whereas the user is saying, okay, I have cryptocurrency and I want to spend it, but there's no merchants that want to adopt it. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, what is going to stimulate this? And really, it needs to come from both sides. And so, for example, Dash is putting a lot of effort on the ground to help solve a problem in Venezuela, where their current fiat currency is experiencing hyperinflation and instability. So they're actually going and growing the merchant user base. In November, they had around 2,000 merchants, and now they have about 5,000. So they're actually putting a lot of effort on the ground. So I think it's teams that actually really get out there and interface with real users and real retail points. It's going to help in terms of the payment use case. And I just want to make a point that when we talk about user adoption, it's actually a really vast landscape that we're looking at, and it will be helpful to kind of categorize user adoption and what type of technology we're talking about. Are we talking about the user adoption specifically of the money use case and a cryptocurrency for payment? Or are we talking about blockchain protocols as a whole and blockchain technology? Or are we talking about decentralized applications like dApps? So there's a lot of different little areas where you need to differentiate. And so, for example, with dApps, if you go onto a website called State of the dApps, for example, they list a lot of statistics about how many dApps are existing in the space. There's over 2,500 dApps that are being actively used, some more than others. And so when you look at that and you look at the statistics on like how many users have been using a particular dApp in the last 24 hours, some of the highest used ones have less than 2,000 people actively using it in the last 24 hours, right? And so some of them, and that's based on different blockchains. And so if you look at that, you can really see, okay, where is the mass adoption actually happening if you only have less than 2,000 users? If you look at the stats on different cryptocurrencies, out of 2,000 plus cryptocurrencies, only 20 of them have more than 1,000 active addresses happening in a 24-hour period. Okay. And so that just puts things in scale of like what that really looks like. Of course, Bitcoin is one of the most active ones. I think I saw this stat was like over 600,000 active addresses. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to see the scale and look at the real numbers when we talk about this.
Instead of just like what you get in the first impression when you see those first numbers, and then how many are actually being used in the end, So I'm sure there are also many worthy projects which did not manage to run ICO or will not succeed much as the hype is evaporating. What is your vision for those startups? How will they proceed? Will they flourish, or is the moment gone?
Well, hopefully there's the startups that have managed to either secure funding and make sure that they either cashed out or held a stable coin through the bear market and still have funds remaining from the ones that they raised during ICO. The ones who haven't done an ICO yet and they're wanting to still gain funding for their ICO project or for their blockchain project in general. The landscape is kind of changing, so the demands of investors are becoming a bit more stringent. The market sentiment is still pretty cold. It's starting to warm up again, but we're going to see that we need to learn from the past. And we don't have much of a past because it's so new, but learning from the hype and from the level of quality of projects that we're able to gain tens of millions of dollars based on just an idea or a white paper with no prototype and with kind of an unknown team, or some of them even full-on scams. Yeah. We need to, as a whole, raise that quality.
You also mentioned that at the end of 2017, statistics showed that there were 18 million users participating in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. Now they show there are 35 million users. That's a substantial rise of 94% more users this year alone. So despite the bear market, how will you explain this trend? Are those all active users?
Yeah, so it's hard to get very accurate statistics on how many users there are in the space, but based on that research that I was looking at how many new addresses were being formed, how many new accounts at exchanges were being formed. And when I read that, I was actually astounded. I was like, how is that happening? I thought everyone was kind of fleeing the scene, moving on and saying, Bitcoin is dead or crypto is dead. Sometimes the media is very distorting in what they show, right? And so when you look under the hood and see stats like that, I can only think that, the speculators are actually excited during bear markets because that's their time to buy. You want to buy low and sell high. That's the general strategy. And the other aspect too is that because of the hype, more people in the mainstream, and this is just my theory, more people in the mainstream are familiar with it and still wanting to check it out. And so it's still, despite the ups and downs, it's still garnered enough interest that it's still growing, significantly.
Yeah. Okay, this has been very interesting. Thank you for telling us about mass adoption of blockchain. We do like to ask all our guests, how do you envision blockchain changing the world?
Well, in some senses, I feel like it already has, and I saw it on the ground in my community where more and more people started coming to the meetups that we're having every week since 2014, and we're having these conversations on a multitude of topics. Not just finance and tech, but sociology and psychology and philosophy and game theory and economics. And it was so amazing because how often do you get in a room of people from all walks of life and have those kind of really rich conversations? And part of it was just the nature of the group itself and the facilitator that was fantastic, but also it's that the field of cryptocurrency calls us to actually consider all these types of things, and to really understand it, you need to learn about all these different fields. And so for me, that's real impact. Like, even if it hasn't been adopted as general payment methods for everybody, the change happens in the mind, in the mindset, and how people view the world, and how financial systems should be organized, or how technological systems and business models of profit sharing and media, so it calls you to question that. And I think that in itself will lend itself to birthing a new generation of people that have different types of thoughts that they'll integrate into designing and creating new products to come.
Okay. And how do you think the market for the blockchain-based solutions will evolve?
I think that the market will evolve to adjust to what users really want, what they can actually bear themselves to participate in. And right now it's a lot at the funding stage. So it's what are investors willing to put capital behind, and what projects actually gain traction. I think that there's a lot of corporate and enterprise level interests that are really pushing forward, and so it's almost a little bit of a race to who is going to be the one or a conglomerate of some to push user adoption. And what I mean by that is, is it centralized or is it decentralized, or is it some interesting hybrid, or is it going to be the big media giants who end up eating the little guys because they already have an existing massive user base. So I think it's who's going to be fast to the table, who's going to create real, tangible, practical, innovative solutions, who has enough money to do so and the resources to do so, and what's the appetite of the users themselves. Yeah.
So this has been fascinating. Thank you again for coming to Blockchain Zoo and telling us about mass adoption of blockchain. Thank you for watching, guys. We at Blockchain Zoo are looking forward to bringing our new guest on our next episode.